Hey, you guys. Welcome to Auditing with Autism. My name is Kyle. I'm a late diagnosed autistic man, and I like to talk about philosophy, music, and autism. I wanted to see if you guys heard about the autistic man who was trespassed from a grocery store. It's an interesting story, and it's kind of personal to me. This man apparently he was going to the store for about 4 years before he was trespassed. He had made friends with the employees there and was even giving them Christmas cards and Christmas gifts. And, he initially came into trouble after he went to the store one day and went in line to go to the cashier. He went to the cashier that was meant for the big baskets, like the shopping carts that are totally loaded, and it takes a little while to get through the line. And the person in front of him had used up the entire conveyor belt that brings the food to the cashier, about a 10-foot long conveyor belt. And so the autistic man, picked up a magazine and started reading. And eventually the conveyor belt started moving, and there was 1 foot free, 2 feet free, 3 feet available to, for the next person to put food on the conveyor belt. But there was still 7 feet in front of that free space. And so the autistic man kept reading. And then the person behind the man said, "Would you put your food on the conveyor belt? Let's get going here." And the autistic man asked the lady to wait for him to finish reading the paragraph that he was reading before he did that, because there was enough time, as he pointed out. The woman got very upset with him, and after 10 seconds, loudly exclaimed that he should start moving and telling him what to do. And but because the autistic man knew there was plenty of time to do the food, putting the food on the conveyor belt, he didn't. And this upset the woman so much that she left the line and went to another line. And the funny part of that story is that they both finished their line at the same time. So, she finished buying her food at the same time he finished buying his food. And so that was great. I mean, in the sense that if she was in a hurry, she got herself together, moved her body over to a better, more efficient line. And so this is, an improvement in her situation. But it caused a problem for the autistic man, because I think what happened was that a lot of people witnessed that happening, and the employees witnessed that happening and made a judgment against the autistic man, and had sympathy for the woman. And I think that's just the simple case of what happened. The man didn't concede, didn't do what the woman had asked him to do. He asked the lady to please give him some more time and wait, instead of, doing what she was telling him to do, which was to get moving, put his food on the conveyor belt. So anyway, this is what happened previous to this man getting trespassed to his local grocery store. A few months later, he comes back and immediately realizes that he's being followed around by the employees. He doesn't understand why, but he sees that it's happening and that they are acting a little bit suspicious. So what caused the trespassing was when the autistic man went to the self-checkout. This time he decided to do 15 items at a time, and he usually buys 50 items or so. So he was going to go through the self-checkout line 3 or 4 times, instead of, one big basket at the teller. He had problems there last time. And so he was going to take care of that problem by going through the self-checkout. But that didn't really work out for him, because the man, he fudged the rules a little bit. The self-checkout says you're supposed to have 15 items, right? Well, the man had 22 items. He was 7 items over the limit. And the reason he did that was because there was, 5 or 6 empty self-checkout registers that nobody was using, and there was no line behind him. And the autistic man, thought that the 15 items or less was meant for convenience. Well, there was a new young lady employee who had been trained to not let people do that. And so when she approached the autistic man who was, fudging the 15 items or less, she approached him with a bit of aggression, and there was anger in her eyes. So what happened was she told him to take the items out of the basket. She started taking the items out of the basket, and then the autistic man said, "Oh, that's fine. I'm sorry about fudging the rules. I didn't think it was inconvenient." But then this is where the problem happened. The woman said, well, the man asked the woman if he could buy his 15 items and then come back and pick up the items that she had taken out of his cart. Pick up the items so that he could then go through the line again and buy them. And she said no. She said something that surprised him. She said that he could only go through the self-checkout line once a day for 15 items. Well, the man had been a customer at the store for, nearly 20 years, and this particular store, 4 years. So, she was adamantly telling him that he couldn't do that. So he eventually asked to speak to her boss or supervisor. And then that supervisor, after they discussed it, said the obvious truth, which is, yeah, you can come through the line as many times as you want. The autistic man thanked the manager for sharing that information. But then when he watched the manager leave, he noticed that he didn't tell the new employee that information. So when the autistic man walked out after purchasing his 15 items, he walked by the new employee who was basically standing guard, watching, as they do, to make sure that nobody's stealing. And he asked the employee if she had been notified by the manager. She said that she had, and she even apologized to him. And that was the end of it. But right before the autistic man could turn to walk away, her fellow employee, another supervisor, had a very bad, scowling look on his face when he said to the autistic man, "You don't have to be condescending." And so that's where the trouble came in, because the autistic man wasn't trying to be condescending at all. That wasn't his intention. And so when he started a discussion with the manager about that, it ended up being a point of contention a little bit. Now, the autistic man, if he was smarter, he would have just left. But he didn't. He wanted to share the information so that nobody was unclear. He wanted to make sure that nobody thought that he was trying to be condescending to this, this nice young lady. Well, eventually, by that autistic man saying all that, these managers decided that they wanted to trespass him from the store for that. And that's what it was all about. And as you probably guessed by now, the autistic man is me. This is another instance of a communication problem that I have had all my life out in public. The first time I've ever been trespassed from a store. The last time I had trouble was 20 months ago at a library, but it was so similar that, I wanted to bring it up. This is a very personal story, so I was speaking in the third person for most of it to make it a little easier probably on myself. But I definitely wanted to let you know that when we have autism, and as I run around as an autistic man, there are so many, hazards that we have to be looking out for constantly to appease other people. For example, in this case, I needed to, be just in the right personality setting so that these people wouldn't get more upset by sharing information. Sharing information is not so easy. It's easy when you are an autistic person because it's, from one autistic brain to the other, there's going to be a general, realization between the two people that the information being shared is just information, and the emotions are, stuck at the door. We'll keep the emotions away from the information. And so therefore, I think we make great, psychologists and things like that, maybe even philosophers, and certainly probably also, priests. But the reality is that most people are very emotionally connected to information. And so if you're saying information and they don't like that information, or they have a different opinion about the information, you could be in trouble a little bit with that person, and you may not even know it. I certainly didn't realize how upset they were getting, I mean, I never can catch. It's interesting. I've been seeing some great videos that I watch, a lot of autistic videos, and these channels, these creators are just so clever and so good. I don't know how they do it, but I'm really glad they're there, and I really appreciate all the work they do. It gave me the courage to make this video, honestly. And so, I just wanted to share this story. I guess I could go on, but oh, there's a little bonus at the end, but which I'll share. I just wanted to just lastly say about the information that we should probably be, mindful of the information that we share, uh, because it's a hazard, and this moment in time feels like a hazardous time. There's so many things going on in the news, in the world, that are causing people to stress out really hard, um, and so it's not a good idea to be flippant or sarcastic or even joking. Uh, you know, it, it's a good idea, I think, to do all those things, but it's not a good idea to do them with strangers in this day and age because of the hazard of doing it, especially if you're autistic. When I realized that I was getting in trouble with these guys and they wanted to trespass me, first time in my life ever. I'm a pretty nice guy, I think, and so I didn't expect that from them. I'm the kind of guy that would give them Christmas cards and gifts, these employees. And they have a system at the store where you could write kudos. They have a pre-printed kudos card that for customers to fill out about employees. And I've filled out the kudos card at that store probably 20 times, in 4 years, because I love them. I love those guys. I know them by name, and I'm always happy to see them. Some of them, some of them I don't know, and they're new. They don't know me. So I was thinking, why did they get so upset with me for this 15 items or less? I fudged the rules a little bit, with the extra items. And the manager said that the reason they get so picky about that is because there's a metrics that the computer's following, that if people buy more than 15 items, the employee who's on duty may actually, that metric is shown. And so maybe it's a knock against their work, that they've done. And to me, that information was so valuable that I told the manager that I think he should put that on the 15 items or less sign. They should tell us that it's not just about convenience, the 15 items or less, that it's actually, a metric that they are keeping track of, because I want to help the people in that store as much as possible. I don't want to cause problems at all. But, if they witnessed me a few months ago saying to another customer who was behind me that I was saying no to her, that no, I'm not going to start putting my food on this conveyor belt because there's another 5 minutes left before there's a necessity for me to do that. And, I think that they made a judgment about me because of that. And I did that. Rarely do I ever stand up for myself. But I was reading a really interesting article, in National Geographic, and I just wanted to finish the paragraph so I could have that thought. And this woman was in a hurry or something, and didn't let it go. And so if you're watching that objectively, you would have to see or make a decision who's in the right or who's in the wrong. And, so that's probably what they did. So that when I came back, months later, they remembered and they followed me around to see how I was going to be acting before I bought my stuff. And then they were there when I bought my stuff, nitpicking. Yeah, I had 7 items over, you know, but I've never had trouble with that ever in that store, in that company. But the highlight, the nice little shining star at the end of the story was that there is another store locally that is the same company. They just opened it up. And so I hadn't been, trespassed from that store. So I went over to that store, it was 10 miles away. And when I went in that store, the I had this huge basket, hundreds of dollars worth of food, right? Somebody bought my food for me. Can you believe that? Somebody was so generous that they bought my groceries. And that would never have happened if I wouldn't have gone through all of it. So I am just so amazed and astonished and joyful for how the universe works sometimes. And I just wanted to share this story because it's a classic story of my life. This is one of the reasons these kinds of problems that I am explaining is one of the main reasons why I like to stay away from people. I basically can't trust them. And I'm getting the message that they can't trust me either. They don't know enough about autism to know why or how it is a person would be acting in the ways that I do sometimes. To me, it seems like just logic. I mean, if it's not your turn in queue, if it's not your turn in the line to put food on the conveyor belt, then why start ordering people what to do? Wait for your turn. And if it's now your turn, then you would have something to complain about. But anyway, I normally would have just let her go on ahead of me. I thought about it so much before I even went back to the store. It was probably something they thought a lot about and something I thought a lot about, how I could have handled that moment with the woman a little better. She was obviously in a hurry. I should have just let her go ahead of me. That would have made her happy. I had the time. But I thought I was standing up for myself a little bit and stuff like that. So good things happen out of weird, bad things. And I'm not mad at, these guys. They're all young kids. There was that one employee who said, you don't have to be condescending, and that's a little much to share an opinion like that with a customer, and that they got me because I felt like there was a lack of justice, and I wanted to make sure that he knew I wasn't intending to be condescending. Big mistake. That was a lesson, for me to just at that moment know and think that people can have their opinions, and even if they're wrong, I don't have to correct them, even though justice might be served if I did. At any rate, that's the end of the story, and I'm happy that you came to watch it, and I love you guys. I hope you come around again. I'm going to be putting out some more music, and I've got a really great philosophy video that I want to put out concerning how we have cultivated consensus, the history of consensus, basically sort of the idea of getting people to believe in an idea, whether it's religion or politics. It starts with religion, and it goes back to the 17th century, and then fast forward to the 20th century. I'm giving you a preview of what I'm about to make, this philosophy video. In the 20th century, Sigmund Freud's nephew is famous. This guy named Bernays. I'll get it all to you, but he made a business around perpetuating the selling of an idea, convincing people. And so I'll talk more about it. I shouldn't even bring it up really if I'm not ready. But anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great day.